Welcome back. My name is Greg McDaniel. This is Real Estate Coach Uncensored.
And I'm Bernice Ross, and I am so delighted to have my good friend, Jimmy Mackin. He is the CEO of Curaytor, and also the co-founder, as well as a book that's doing really, really well called What to Say for Real Estate Agents. This thing is awesome. If you haven't read it, it is a must read. Jimmy, thank you for being with us today.
Bernice, as always, and Greg, thank you both for having me. I'm excited to share with your audience, some of the ideas we've been putting out there online recently. We're in a wild real estate market right now, and I think every person who's going to be listening to this podcast and listening to this replay is thinking about, how they can kind of navigate over the next few months and put themselves in a position to grow their business. So hopefully, we'll be able to provide a couple takeaways for your audience today.
Well, the thing I love about what we're going to be talking about today, you have gone from the land of in-person scripts to put together a fantastic email marketing, a series of what you're calling your swipe and steal scripts. Mm-hmm. And every one of these is available if you visit the Curaytor site, and there'll be links to them in the article and on YouTube when we publish it there. But this stuff is pure gold. And Jimmy, could you just say a little bit about what you're doing at Curaytor? Because I know you have tested all of these. This is just not something Jimmy sat there and made up. This is something that has been tested and tested and tested. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, I think when you look at the marketing landscape, you see most agents right now are putting energy and effort into building their brand through Instagram, through TikTok, through YouTube, through their website, through advertising. And there's sort of this 800-pound gorilla in the room that actually drives major results for most brands outside of our space that very few agents are taking advantage of, and that is email marketing. Email marketing is arguably the highest ROI marketing channels out there. Some report, if the Campaign Monitor reports a 40x ROI. The problem is in our industry, and the reason why I made this decision to invest in these swipe and steal templates is that there's been this narrative in our space, Bernice, where people say, oh, just automate everything, put them on a drip campaign, put them on a sequence. And we lost sort of the soul of our brand when we do that. You have to think with all the changes that are happening with advertising today, there is one thing that you really can own, and that is your email list and how you market, how you communicate, how you engage with your email list. It can be a major driver of growth. So hopefully today I can inspire and excite you to get motivated to use email marketing as a major channel to grow your business.
Well, I think what you've done is absolutely brilliant. And again, I love, one of the things I love about what you do at Curaytor and, with all the podcasts you've been doing, how many years have you been doing those? It's been quite a long time.
Yeah, we've been doing it for about 8+ years now. We've been
podcasting, 8 years now?
Doing videos. Yeah, it's maybe even 10 years. Maybe, I think we might have passed the decade mark without even realizing it. It's been quite some time.
This is great, Jimmy. So let's begin by talking about exactly how you go about constructing these scripts, kind of what the overall pattern is. And then we're going to take a look at 8 of them. And Jimmy's going to walk you through how each one of them fits in potentially to your business. And these are golden because you can adjust them for so many different things. So Jimmy, what's your thinking as you look at these? Kind of what's the big picture?
Well, the first thing when you're writing anything, and I mean, whether it's a text message that you're sending out to a group of 100 leads, or whether it is an email that you're sending out to 10,000 prospects, or an ad campaign that you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in over the course of a couple of years to build your brand, the first thing that you need to do is you need to think about your audience, and you need to write as if you're writing to an individual. I think oftentimes, Bernice, the mistake that we make before we even get into the tactics, the mistake that we make when it comes to copywriting is we're writing to an auditorium. We're speaking to an auditorium. And when you think about great writing that really moves us, writing that really feels like it's speaking to the needs and the wants of the consumer, it feels like it's written just for us. So I think the first thing that everyone who's listening today needs to think about when you're getting into the habit of writing more to deliver better emails to generate results for your business is this mindset. And that is the audience of one. Picture the person that you're writing to. Try to articulate their persona, who they are, what their pain points are, what their problems are, what stage of the journey they're in. And that's going to help you as you begin to use this construct that we're going to break down in a second here, Bernice. But I think I want to start there and just get your reaction, because I think it's a really important part of this process of writing great copy and copy that motivates people.
I couldn't agree with you more, but one of the things you mentioned, you were just talking, you mentioned the term persona, and most people may not be familiar about how that is used by big marketing companies and in big corporations who identify different personas for the types of people who are buying their products. Could you just kind of educate our listeners just a little bit as to what that is about and how that can apply to their business?
Yeah, the persona is just a tool that a business can use to describe its ideal customer profile. The way that we use it at Curaytor is we try to understand, first and foremost, what is the situation and the scenario that the consumer is currently in today? What led up to that moment, meaning what has been their journey up until the moment they're at right now, and what's coming next. And so you can use a persona to describe the characteristics of an individual, the type of buyer, the type of seller, what area they're in, what price point are they selling. And that's more of the sort of the demographic data. But the part of the persona that I think is really powerful is understanding what are they hoping to achieve, and beginning to sort of try to uncover that piece of it. So you might have like a frustrated Frank. This is a buyer who's been in the market for 6 months, who has failed to put in a successful offer and has been outbid over 10 times. Like you might say this, let's call him frustrated Frank. That's a persona. Now you can start to build out like characteristics of this individual and scenarios and situations they've experienced to help understand who they are, their pain points, where they're at in their journey. And then you can begin to speak to that as part of your marketing strategy. So right now, I think most agents, they kind of generalize personas, Bernice, in the sense of they say, we have buyers and we have sellers. That's not good enough. You have to go much deeper than that if you really want to resonate and you really want to connect with people on an emotional level, and of course, motivate them to action.
So the first big takeaway here is you need to think about this audience of one. Mm-hmm. Now, the next thing, let's go to your subject lines, the actual, how do you construct what's the big picture? A subject line, body, call to action? What's your structure that you're using?
Well, generally speaking, the structure I'll use is the subject line, which is the most important part of the email. Right now, 80% of consumers will only read the subject line. So this is an opportunity for us to entice them and try to get them to open the email. That is the main function of a subject line. The next part is the hook, and this is that sort of first sentence or two in which I am trying to punch them in the face with something, trying to get them to basically read the next sentence. This is something Brian Clark from Copy Blogger preached about for many years has been the purpose of that first line is to get them to read the second line. So, the hook, and we'll talk about some of the tactics there. Then I get into the body of the email, and generally speaking, in sort of the short attention span world that we live in, and where most emails are being opened on mobile devices, I try to use story, stats, and predictions as ways to kind of engage my audience. Stats being interesting stats about what's happening right now in the market. Stories being, stories that are going to hopefully appeal to or resonate with the audience I'm targeting. And predictions, which is trying to forecast in the future, paint a picture of where the world's going, which I think some companies right now outside of our industry do really well, that can give the consumer confidence that something they don't know. And then lastly, I try to have a call to action. And this is, and we'll talk about this in a little bit because some of my emails don't have a call to action. That's very deliberate, but you want to have a next steps, like what is going to happen next? You've educated them, you inspire them, you gave them some great information. What do you want them to do next? So if you can stack all those things together, subject line, hook, story, stat, prediction, call to action, that basic framework can help you create much more effective emails than what you may be accustomed to with what you've been doing up until this point.
Wow, this is great. So let's get to some of these scripts. So the first one is the Matchmaker Strategy. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, so the value proposition of a real estate agent has evolved over the last 12 months. I ask this question oftentimes to audiences. I said, do me a favor and define. If you're watching this replay, just think about this, play along with us for a moment. Do me a favor and define what is the definition, the textbook definition of a seller's market. Is it when inventory levels are lower than the demand? Is it when there's a 6 months of supply, 4 months of supply, 3 months of supply? You know, I did some research on this, Bernice, and what I found was there really isn't a textbook definition. If you ask 100 agents, they're going to give you about 100 different answers. The general theme is when demand exceeds supply, we are in a seller's market. Now, I think we need a new term to describe what we're experiencing. When inventory levels are down 40%, when buyer demand is up 60%, this is some of the data reported by Redfin, when you see situations where the average list price to sales price is over 100%, the first time in history that has been the case, we need a new name to describe this, because this is not the same thing as when inventory levels or the absorption rate is like 179 days. And so the value proposition of an agent in this type of market, however we want to define it, needs to evolve with the new term. And it's like with this new world that we live in, where it's not even a seller's market, it's just sort of this new thing. It's hard to even define, where it's a frenetic market. The value proposition of we will sell your home really fast for a lot of money is falling on deaf ears, because the consumer believes that they can put their sign in the yard with any agent and they could sell their home for way above asking price. So what does that mean? That means that as an agent, we have to say, can we figure out a way to help sellers who want to buy and buyers who are looking for the right home with a strategy to find homes before they hit the market, or at least like start to work for them? And so the Matchmaker Strategy, the basic premise behind it was, right now, if you tell me what you're looking for, I've got a database of 5,000 consumers in our local area. If you tell me what you're looking for, bedroom, bathroom, price point, I will email out this list to my database and basically saying, hey, if you own a home right now that fits this criteria, we have a buyer for you. And bringing those two people together, creating that sort of matchmaker. So it's about getting off-market listings to raise their hand and say, I didn't realize my home was in such great demand, and looks like you've already got people lined up. And you can kind of make that connection. Now, this is based off of many different strategies I've seen in real estate that I've adapted for email. So like this is the Tom Ferry famously had the We Have Buyers. One of our clients, Amy Youngren, uses the magic buyer letter where she drops us off actually at people's houses. But this strategy is based off of an email marketing strategy one of our clients, Heather Buckman, does. I did a video on Instagram for her, where she includes the matchmaker kind of script at the bottom of every email she sends. Like basically, hey, if you own a home in these areas, here's a list of buyers that we have that are looking for homes just like yours. It's a super smart strategy. Now, one thing I'll point out with the scripts, I know we'll link to the scripts in the show notes. This is maybe my favorite subject line that I've written, and I stole it from my friend Chris Voss, who wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. And it is maybe one of the most powerful phrases you can use, which is, have you given up on? Because the instant reaction people are going to have is they're going to say with enthusiasm, no, I haven't given up on, whatever it is they're trying to achieve. So the subject line of this email is, have you given up on trying to find a home on Zillow? And so if you can imagine for a moment, and if you're the audience, in this case, Bernice, I'm saying Bernice has, let's say, been looking for homes for 6 months. She's checking Zillow and Redfin every single day. She's not seeing anything new on the market. She's getting incredibly frustrated. So when you hit her with an email like this, it's speaking to her exact situation, her exact scenario, which means we have an opportunity to connect with her when we introduce this concept. So that's the basic premise behind the strategy.
You're touching the pain point. People are frustrated. And in the actual script, I love how you said, have you given up on? Because this was not in the script. But everybody wants to know the things that are off market. So you've tapped the pain point, which is the power of email marketing, and then you've got a solution. So here's the pain point. Here's the solution. Here's the call to action.
The name your price script here. One of the things that my co-author of Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents, Phil M. Jones, has taught me about sales is you need three things. You need curiosity, you need empathy, and you need courage. And one of the core parts of being great at sales is just asking questions without having any predefined, goal you want to achieve, just for the sake of being curious, to dig deeper, to understand where the consumer's coming from. And so the name your price script is designed around using that angle of being curious. Now, here's what we're doing with this. And I'll read this one verbatim because it's fairly short. The subject line is name your price. And the goal of that is it's almost like we're including a call to action in the subject line, which is a technique that can work really well if you're trying to get some engagement. Hi, Bernice, a quick update on the market. Last week, 123 Main Street sold for 13% above asking price. In total, it had 25 offers. Just out of curiosity, do you have a quote, I'd be crazy not to sell, end quote, price in mind? I can't wait to hear your answer, Jimmy. And so what we're doing here is we're tapping into a marketable moment that has happened in your local area that would be interesting. When you heard me earlier talk about stat, story prediction, this is me using a stat. And now you can use OPL, other people's listings. This doesn't have to be your listing. If a home hit the market and it was a notable sale and it sold above asking price in a few days with 25 offers, like that's something a consumer should know about. And so I like when you can take the big and make it small. When you say home values are up 17%, year over year, that's a big idea. When you say 123 Main Street sold for, 13% above asking price with 25 offers, that's a small idea, right? And so you can take the big and make it small. And so this email, what's so powerful about this is, and then why it's been so effective for people who have used it, is because the line, just out of curiosity, it's not, hey, we need more homes to sell. How much will you sell your home for? It's like, we're just playing the game out of curiosity, just out of curiosity. It's a low risk question. It's an easy to answer for the consumer. And that is the power behind a strategy like this. And what I think is surprising, and what we've seen with this is the crazy not to sell price is actually aligned with the market. So people are like, oh, I'd sell if I can get 700,000. Well, in fact, you can get 700,000, right? Because the home values are up 20% over the year, and homes like yours are selling super quickly. And so it's just been a really interesting way to start conversations in a low pressure, low risk way for the consumer. And it's, been super effective for people who are looking to book more listing appointments and start more seller conversations.
You and I use similar verbiage. I use a script of, if I was to drop a bag of cash at your feet right now, what would that number look like? Mm-hmm. And I'll actually take my notepad and then drop it on the ground in front of people. And you and I use very similar techniques, and it just, something snaps in people's brains when they really have, it's like a real world offer right there. It's like, okay, what would that number really be? Okay, am I crazy, or is it, rational?
You bring up a great point, which is, I think one of the powers of being a great marketer is asking thought-provoking questions. And you like, so if I drop a bag of cash at your feet, right, like you're visualizing it, right? You're like, you're just like, you see it, you feel it. And this is something where, and what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to speak in the language of the consumer. Because consumers say, this is how sellers speak, because we talk to sellers, we interview sellers, we have conversations with them to understand, how they think. And they say, if I could get X for my home, I'd sell. This is literally how they say it. They go, if I could get X for my home, I'd sell. And so that's what we're trying to do, is say like, hey, what is X? Hey, if you could get X, what would X be? And that's that kind of like getting to them and speaking to them at their level, not speaking down to them with sort of the corporate speak that we tend to do in real estate.
Yeah, we can take the corporate out and get the personality put back in and understand their wants, needs, and desires. As soon as you understand where their driving desire is, whatever it is, it's time or money or convenience or family or whatever that is, then we can work backwards and become more effective at when we use our techniques. Because now, like you said, very well put, by the way, Jimmy, you're not talking down to them, you're talking with them. Mm-hmm. And now we're having a conversation. And now you get to build a relationship. And once you build the relationship, then they're going to trust. And once the trust starts, then you're going to be able to start doing business.
Jimmy, let's go on the next one, which is re-engage your past clients.
In the world that we live in today, I think the vast majority of top producing agents still generate most of their income from their book of business. It accounts, if you ask the average top producer, it tends to account for, 50, 60, 70% of their business. And unfortunately, what happens right now, we live in a world where we are so conditioned to either be the ones who are putting out content or just passively scrolling through social media that we never turn the corner and engage with people based on what's important that's happening in their life. And so one of the things that I've always railed against, Bernice, and just because I think the intention is good, but the execution lacks imagination. And that is putting your clients, your past clients, on some type of past client 35 touch a year program. It lacks a soul. And it lacks a personality, and it lacks relevancy and context. And so one of the things that we have to realize is that we're dealing with human beings who are constantly undergoing changes in their life. And so imagine for a moment, my dog, who I had for 15 years, passed away recently. We had to put him down. He had cancer, and it was awful experience, right? Super traumatizing. But, we're at a point now, it's only been a few weeks now, but it's this moment where we've started to celebrate his life and think about all the joy he brought us. And we try to have this forward-looking outlook about how grateful we were to have such an amazing dog. Now, imagine for a second that I was on an agent's drip campaign, and 1 week after I had to put my dog down, I got an email saying, "Hey, Gene, I was thinking about today. Hope all's going well." If I got that email, the initial reaction I had was is this person kidding me? It's just so out of touch. People are in your lives are getting married, having babies, they're going through loss, they're going through successes, they're getting job promotions, they're moving careers, they're moving locations, and it's a living, breathing thing. And if you actually care, then you shouldn't put them on some type of drip campaign that shows them that you don't. And so the idea behind this is very simple, is that people tend to share the important things that are happening in their life online. So what you need to be doing here, this is the example, the script the subject line is directly talking about something they just did. So the subject line, this one is your LinkedIn post. So the scenario is this individual got a promotion. They posted, they got a new promotion for their job they're working at. And it's a way for me to say, "Hey, Greg, I saw your post on LinkedIn. It's been way too long since I reached out. I just want to say congratulations on your promotion. I know how hard you work and how I'm incredibly excited to see you succeed. And then I can turn the corner if I want." And so this is optional. I can say, "I'm not sure if you've been following the news about the real estate market, but it's been pretty wild. I'll check back in with you in about a week to give you an update. In the meantime, I'm here if you need me." And so what I'm doing now is I'm not doing the hard sell. I'm using the life event to reach out and engage with them. I'm making a mention of the fact that the real estate market's crazy, and I'm kind of giving permission to check back in another week or two. And so that technique, you can use it depending on the scope of the post, right? So if they're posting about a loss, you probably wouldn't put a real estate quote in there or something about the real estate market, but you use their life events as a catalyst to reach out. And then if you guys can visualize with me here, you sort of slowly open the door a little bit, not all the way, just a little bit, to start a conversation about real estate. And then now a week later, you can open the door all the way open and step in and provide information because you said you were going to. That's the strategy behind it. And so if you can imagine every day, if every agent who's listening to this podcast, if every day they scour over their Instagram feed, their Facebook feed, their LinkedIn feed, and they look for these moments, and every time they see a moment, they have their computer open, they send a quick message like this, the ROI from their social media marketing would go up 100-fold. And let's be clear, the average US consumer spends over 1 hour and 40 minutes on social media every single day. 38 of those minutes is on Facebook. You're already there. I'm not asking you to introduce new ideas into your busy schedule. You're already there. Let's take this opportunity to turn the corner and start engaging with people in a way that's meaningful and generates results. So that's the idea behind the strategy, Bernice.
You know, Jimmy, which just circle back to the beginning here, audience of one. That's a huge takeaway. And I love what you're saying about going in about those moments. And if you look for 5 of those opportunities each day in your social media, whether it's LinkedIn or on Facebook, if you look for 5 different people who've had life events and you comment on those and just, you know, congratulate them, it's a huge win.
In some respects, you know, my partner, Chris Smith, said something recently that really resonated with me. He says, the growth that you're trying to achieve, you probably have already heard the advice you needed to hear. And so for people who are out there right now, you probably have heard this advice. Now, hopefully it's hitting you at the right time where you're motivated to do something about it. And so this advice of just going one-to-one is something you probably heard a dozen times from a dozen different people in this space. But now what I wanted to do in this strategy, Bernice, is to give you sort of the tools to get out there and actually execute, which is the reason behind the Swipe and Steal template. When everybody is just liking or maybe just commenting, what's that pattern interrupt? That one thing kind of just turn the volume up on the strategy that just sticks with them. And I think all of us, for people in our network, we all have connections that have gone above and beyond, and that has always resonated with us, and we never forget that. But I always say to myself, I don't want to waste their time. So if I'm going to interact with somebody, if I'm replying, that's one thing. But if I'm reaching out and I'm like outbound prospecting to people who are engaging on social media, I'm trying to say, how do I not waste their time? So I think one of the worst ways to start any email when you reach out, whether it's a direct message or whether it's an email or whether it's a phone call, which is, hey, Greg, it's Jimmy here. I hope you're doing well. I hope things are going really, like, you're just sort of like giving all these pleasantries that the consumer's kind of just been conditioned to ignore. And so I think if you're outbounding, you need to be saying, how do I not waste their time? Let me get to the point, give them some value, hook them in, and then maybe a conversation can ensue. If you're just replying to comments, that's great, right? Like, I think the more you can interact with people, the better. Obviously, that works really well. And your audience appreciates that, honestly.
Jimmy, let's go into the next one, which is educate your buyers with relevant data. What's that one about?
One of the smartest things you can do to become a content creator in this space. You've heard for many years, people would say, as a real estate brand, you have to become a media company. You have to be constantly producing content for social, for email, for video, for your website. One of the very first steps that you should take if you want to pursue that strategy is to get your inputs right. And what I mean by that is identifying the sources of information that you use to feed your creativity. There are a few sources of data that I think are absolutely at the top of their game in real estate. So obviously, Inman puts out amazing content. I've been a huge fan of Inman for many years. Brad and the whole team there have done incredible work. Beyond Inman for a moment, I think Redfin's research is extraordinary. The work that Glenn and his team are doing, I mean, you read it, you learn from it, it's easy to understand, and it's relevant. It's all about what's happening right now. Zillow is putting out absolute phenomenal content about consumers' behaviors and how they're changing and how the market is adjusting. And so what I look for is when something catches my eye or my attention, when I see a stat and I say, oh, that's interesting. That's unique. That's different. That's like something I think people would find interesting. Let me give you an example of this. I saw on CNBC recently that the searches for the terms, when will the real estate market crash, have increased 2,450% just in the last 3 months. Now, let me repeat that for your audience, right? The search term, people typing this into Google, when will the real estate market crash, has gone up 2,450%. So I find an interesting stat, and then I provide commentary on that. Mm-hmm. And so if let's take that example, right? I might open the email up with basically like the subject line might read a stat you need to know. And the first line is searches for the keyword phrase, when will the real estate market crash, in quotes, is up 2,450%. And that's my hook. Now, like, they got my attention. And so now I'm going to turn the corner and say, let me commentate on this. So this might be the next line. I might say, this might be something you even ask yourself. Should I wait until the market stabilizes? Should I wait until the market begins to slow down and prices begin to decline? Or should I take advantage of the opportunity today and the fact that rates are really low and whatever other factors? And so you now have an opportunity to talk about how maybe 2008 is different than 2021. And now you have an opportunity to educate the consumer and point out all the differences between the market and maybe how the market could slow down. What are some possible scenarios that could result in prices beginning to slow down and values begin to sort of stabilize? And then maybe the other side, which is how could the market accelerate? What's a scenario in which prices continue to rise at the current pace? And so find an interesting data point, something that surprises you, that gets you excited, and then turn that into an opportunity to educate the consumer. And this is where you have an opportunity to really cut your teeth and establish yourself as an authority, a trusted expert, when you go beyond the platitudes of real estate, which is now's a great time to sell. It's never been a better time to list your property. Mortgage rates are at historic lows, right? We could sell your home quickly for more money than the average agent. Like, go beyond that. That's not helpful. The consumer doesn't care about that. And so what I try to do in any one of these sort of emails where I'm using a stat, find an interesting stat, provide some commentary, some objective commentary, pros, cons, what happens if you win, what happens if you lose, and give that information freely and openly to the consumer. And what you get in return is a consumer who sees you as a trusted expert, who now has a reason to reach out to you when they want to think about making a move in real estate. That's the power behind a strategy like this, Bernice.
Well, Jimmy, let's go on to the next one, which is setting faster appointments.
Sure. Well, I can just give, because I know we're going to give the scripts away, so I won't read this one verbatim. But one thing that I found recently was I was doing some research. I believe the site is called ssrn.com. It's where Malcolm Gladwell does a lot of research. So he mentioned on one of his podcasts and said, if it's good enough for Malcolm Gladwell, it's certainly good enough for me. And it's these peer-reviewed case studies. And one of the things I found in this article was the percentage of no-shows for appointments in doctor offices. So if you book a same-day appointment with a doctor's office, you are 98% likely to show up to that appointment. If that appointment starts to go out a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, your show rate declines significantly, down 30, 40, 50%, depending on how far you are. And as you can imagine, the further away from booking the appointment to holding the appointment, the lower the show rate is. So the idea behind this script was saying, every day you're booking appointments with buyers and sellers, and rather than try to book it a week or 2 weeks in advance, knowing that it may be canceled, can you try to book it in the next 24 hours or 48 hours? And so the script is basically designed to say, even if you're not ready to make a move now, let's still get together. Let's still meet in the next 24 hours because we want to make sure that you're prepared. So when the timing is right, because we never know when the right time is going to come in today's market, we can be in a position to take advantage of the market. And so the idea is give the consumer a compelling reason why meeting with you in 24 hours makes sense. You increase your show rate. You avoid the dreaded no-show, which is just so unbelievably demoralizing for an agent. Like, imagine you spent all morning working on your listing presentation. You have your marketing material, you have the CMA, you got your suit pressed, you're ready to go. You show up and like, oh, an hour beforehand, hey, we're gonna have to reschedule. Like, I can't think of anything more depressing and demoralizing as a salesperson than a moment like that, especially as you're preparing for it. So that's the basic idea behind it. Give the consumer a compelling reason to meet, drive the appointment within the next 24 hours, get them on the calendar, face-to-face or in Zoom, and you'll increase your show rate significantly, and you'll be a much more profitable and efficient agent. That's the idea behind that one.
One is very simplistic, but has a lot of power behind it. And it's just build the buzz. Walk me through that.
Well, I think the most important part of being a great listing agent is how you market your listings. one of the secrets to generating more listings is to market the ones you already have. And so what you want to do with your marketing is you want to put yourself in a position where other sellers in the market see what you're doing for your current clients and say, I want that for myself. Your marketing is your product. It is the way you demonstrate how you're different than every other agent. So the build a buzz category taps into a strategy that's so fundamental to what we teach at Curaytor, which is listing life cycle, which is marketing at every stage of the listings life cycle. So most people will try to promote a listing either when it hits the market or sometimes right before it hits the market. And what I think, when I think about the opportunity here, I think there's an opportunity to market the listing appointment. And no one's really doing this. And the ones who do really drive results for their business. How could you market a listing appointment? You've just booked a listing appointment, and now you're going to market the fact that you're meeting a seller. Well, think about it for a second, right? What does everybody want in this industry? People who are looking to buy a home. They want that competitive edge. So if they feel like they can get insider information, or at least connect with an agent who can get them information faster than anybody else, they're going to be drawn to that individual. We're looking for that edge, right? Buying real estate is a lot like buying stocks. You're looking for that edge. So the concept is, in the subject line, it says, I'm about to meet a potential seller. And then we get into the email and we say, hi, I'm not sure this is for you, but I'm about to meet a seller at 2 p.m. today who's thinking about listing their home. I can't give away too much information, but what I can say is homes like this typically sell above asking price and within a few days of being listed. If you're in the market, reply to this email right now and I'll add you to my VIP list. The moment I can share the details with you, I will. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to get my database to say, actually, I am really interested in that property. Now, I realize with clear cooperation policies and certain MLS guidelines, what information you can share is going to depend based on your specific MLS and your specific board. But what I will say is, do not let that stop you from being creative. As an example, if you can't share really anything, what you might be able to say, hey, listen, I'm about to meet a potential seller. I can't share any information with you until this home is in the MLS. That being said, the moment I hit enter on my keyboard, I want to be able to tell you about it. If you're interested in it, let me know. And so now all of a sudden you're using scarcity, which is a principle in psychology. There's a book behind me called Influence by Robert Cialdini. It talks about this. Scarcity. You're using scarcity and exclusivity to draw somebody in, right? And so most agents market the listing. What I want your audience and everyone who's watching today's podcast to do is start marketing the listing appointment. Get your sellers or your buyers bought in early. And guess what? Here's sort of the cherry on top here. Imagine for a moment you send this email out to 1,000 people and you get 25 people to reply, yeah, I'm really interested. When you walk into the listing presentation, you exchange pleasantries, they give you a tour of the property, you sit down at the dining room table and they say, okay, well, let's talk about how you can help me sell my house and why you're different. Now you just pull up your laptop and say, great agents are ones who are out there creating videos and photography and marketing your home and helping you negotiate and helping you with the process. But truly exceptional agents are helping you build the buzz around your home and making your home the absolute star. Because guess what? There are hundreds of homes that are listing on our MLS every single month. It's about making your home the star. And in fact, prior to this appointment, I sent this email out and I've got 25 people right now who have replied, said they're interested. So you can walk in and you can win that listing appointment by demonstrating that you're great at your job, as opposed to providing that kind of concept like, oh, once you hire me, I'll do a bunch of stuff. No, you've already got to work for that. So that's really the brilliance behind a campaign like this.
And Jimmy, you also said, we don't just list properties, we launch them, but I like making them the star. I think that's even better.
So it's about building excitement around something to maximize that moment when you launch it. So I'm a big believer in treating these listings as your best marketing asset, because they are. And great agents invest in marketing their listings. And the ones that do that are able to win in more listings because sellers see what they're doing.
Well, let's go on to the next one. Just sold reimagined. I love this one, Jimmy, because what you've done is that people, they market when the property closes, but there's an opportunity to market as you do in this script while the property is under contract, but before it closes.
Yeah, and you know, again, I'm gonna provide a big disclaimer here, because every time I put a script out like this, someone says, "Oh, I can't do this in my market." And so, you know, Patty McCord from Netflix once said something. She was the chief people person over there. She said, "Problem finders are cheap. Problem solvers were the ones that, like, we want to have a problem solvers mentality. So like, if you can point out a problem, you know, I can't market under contract. Okay, we'll just make an adjustment. Go when it sells, that's completely fine. But like, understand the concept here, which is the concept is when you sell a property, one of the things, you have this moment in time where you can market your marketing. And so this is where you could talk about how you promoted, marketed, advertised a particular property to help the customer generate the results they're looking for. And so what we use in this tactic is we use specificity, which is, as opposed to saying, we just sold, the subject line of this email is 35,234 people saw this home. And you can include the address if you want. 35,234 people saw 36 Grant Drive, which might be the address of the home. And that kind of entices people, has that hook. And then what you're doing is you're using storytelling, which is because you promoted this listing when it hit the market. You can open it up by saying, "Hey, a few weeks ago, I emailed you about our newest listing, 36 Grant Drive. I want to circle back with you to give you a quick update. The home was listed for 12 days. We had 23 offers, including 8 cash, and is currently under contract for $28,235 above asking price." Now, if you have to do it when it's sold, and it currently just sold for $28,385 above asking price. To provide perspective, this is where you can use data, then give context. To provide perspective, that is 8% higher than the sale to list ratio to other comparable homes. This is where you, as a real estate agent, begin to differentiate your brand. So as opposed to saying it's sold for above asking price, okay, how much more above asking price compared to the average listing in your market? Because the delta between those two things is the value proposition you have. And so this is where we want to communicate that in a clear way. And then you could turn the corner and talk about how you achieve such great results by investing in marketing and preparing and staging and advertising the home and negotiating and all the things you want to cover. And this is really where I think agents understand the power behind a just sold. Having a picture of your client holding a sign, right? Like sort of like I call them the proof of life strategy, which is the sort of like they're holding like a newspaper with a date to show like they're still alive. Like holding the just sold sign's fine. Like I'm like okay with that strategy. I'm not against it. It's a bit cheesy and hokey, but it's fine. It works. But I want you to turn the corner and tell the story behind it, and then show the fact that you delivered a ton of value through your marketing and your servicing, which justifies why they should hire you over anybody else in their market who could sell a home and above asking price in a few days. So that's the sort of the inspiration behind that strategy, Bernice.
Great. Well, to wrap up for today, generate higher quality reviews. Ultimately, we've been talking about the life cycle of a transaction. We're now down to the review. How can we go about doing that?
Well, reviews matter. This is one of the things that I'm so passionate about, which is being number one really matters, meaning being the number one place for people number one for reviews really matter. And we saw this sort of, I'm calling it the great exodus of Zillow, which is people are no longer trust Zillow reviews. There's issues with the past sales. There's issue with the reviews being shown. And so right now, everyone has started to exodus towards and migrate towards Google. And so we're seeing a major land grab right now in Google where agents are trying to establish themselves as a number one review. And there's a few factors that go into your Google reviews: proximity, relevancy, these things matter. So just getting a 5-star review that says, "Hey, Greg's great," that's not helpful for your brand, other than the fact that it may help you increase the total quantity of reviews. Most consumers will look at, 90+% of consumers will look at your review to see whether or not they want to hire you. But the other factor they cite is the content of the review. They don't just look at the number, they look at what people say. So when I talk about asking or getting higher quality reviews, there's a technique you can use in psychology called priming. And the way priming works is by using certain language and asking certain questions, you're trying to influence someone's behavior. And so if in this case, I'm asking questions, I'm priming the consumer with questions to encourage them to write a more thoughtful, comprehensive, and persuasive review. So why did you decide to make a move? What were you looking for in a realtor? Why did you choose us? What did you value most about our service? And what advice would you give to a potential buyer or seller? These questions are designed to start the kind of creative process for the consumer to write more compelling, more persuasive reviews. So when we ask for a review, we're saying, hey, also, don't worry if you don't know what to write. I've included a few simple questions to help you get started. This can get you from writing the Greg was great, he was an amazing realtor, to a review that might read, we were looking for houses for 3 years. We interviewed 5 other agents. No one seemed to be able to help us. We were super desperate. We got connected to Greg because we saw his reviews online, and I reached out, and it was an amazing experience. The thing I valued most about Greg is that he was an extraordinary communicator. He kept us up to date the entire process. He was a fierce negotiator, and we actually got the home of our dreams. And we got the home of our dreams. And my advice to anybody who's thinking about buying or selling is stop what you're doing right now and reach out to Greg. Like, that's a review. That's a review that if you read out, you're like, okay, I want to hire this dude. And so that's what we're trying to do with our reviews, is not just go for the 5 stars, go for the 5 stars plus the story. So when you bookend every listing, just to kind of wrap the bow around this, Bernice, for us, every listing, build the buzz, every listing, promote it when it hits the market, every listing, highlight the story when you sell the property, and every listing, ask for a compelling review to help you build your brand, build your influence, and drive more listing appointments for your business.
Jimmy, what a great way to wrap up for today. Thank you so much for being with us. This has been an amazing hour packed with so much content. I can't remember an interview where we have had a more in-depth discussion of something that really matters and the exact how-tos to do it. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you both. Appreciate you.